Welcome back to the Millennium Alliance official podcast. We bring you the latest insights and technology solutions from inspirational industry leaders who are shaping the future of enterprise success. I'm Connor Toohey, and we're just thrilled to have another special guest. Seems like this is a regular now for this podcast, but just an amazing guest, a real go-getter. We have Dom Esposito. He's the CEO and co-founder of Network, a pioneering platform in vendor management systems, as we'll refer to the as VMS throughout this podcast. But really, the leading platform for shift-based workforces. We're going to be diving into Network and everything it has to offer, and just the space in general. So, Dom, can't wait to talk to you. Welcome to the Millennium Live podcast. It's great to have you here.
Connor, thanks so much for having us. Really excited to talk today about network capabilities and how we're looking at shift-based workforces and empowering the front line.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, Network is really setting itself apart in such a competitive market where the need for efficient workforce management is really important. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing frontline workforce management, the pressing challenges of procurement leaders are face this year and beyond, because the road only looks a little tougher from here. And we'll share how Network is really improving this space and through their AI-powered VMS, really revolutionizing scheduling, improving workforce management, helping companies reduce their reliance on contingent labor, the role of automation in transforming vendor management, and really to package it all up, how Network is ensuring ethical and equitable outcomes in this age of AI, which is something that we're always constantly talking about on this show. So that's where I want to start, Dom, is by talking about the landscape of the frontline workforce and the frontline workforce management, which is just rapidly evolving. So, as someone, you have such a great background. We could do a whole podcast on you and all the great work that you're doing and the success that you're having in your career, but focusing in on what Network is trying to solve. What do you see as the most pressing challenges as well as opportunities for procurement leaders in frontline industries this year? Some of the challenges that you've really had to tackle this year and what you see going forward.
Thanks, Connor. Excited to get started here. So yeah, look, as you've given the great context and introduction, Network is a VMS for shift-based labor. So really important to understand that space and what really is unique about, as we say, either shift-based or the frontline workforce. And this is your hospitality, retail, healthcare, manufacturing, right? These are the change makers that every single day are out there building and progressing the future, really empowering the economy. And so when we look at it from a procurement space and how we think about how a typical procurement buyer might look at the agencies that they have representing their frontline workforces or their shift-based workforces, this has largely been a workforce or a group that's been largely neglected previously. It typically is very challenging to get that type of spend under management because of the complexity of that workforce. It's every day can be a different schedule. Every shift can look different from, worker arriving at 5 a.m. for a construction job to a nurse, in a healthcare institution working overnight at a 12 a.m. type job. And so there's really, as we see it, kind of four, key pressing challenges that happen inside this industry that really make it hard to solve for, and the reason we built Network for procurement buyers to begin with. So first is the actual rate card compliance of vendors inside this industry. When we look at the rate cards that all these suppliers will be having, because of the nature of the work and the variation of the work and how it's very atypical from day to day, enforcing the right rates and making sure that the rates that you're thinking you're getting as a buyer of contingent labor are actually what is being matched to it from a vendor perspective, and could be quite complex. Remember, these shifts can change. They're not static as in other types of vendor management spaces. The second, from a procurement, buyer perspective, it's pretty important to think about how time, or kind of, time theft even is handled inside of the equation within a shift-based labor. So from a shift-based labor perspective, making sure that the clock in is at the right time, making sure that, it's not, taken for granted in terms of the amount of labor that's happening in a given time can really help savings from a procurement buyer's perspective to make sure that that all gets organized. Typically, what we find is this is all being managed today in paper timesheets or emails or spreadsheets, and that can be really, not helpful in terms of managing the actual time wastage that might be happening on some of these individual jobs. The third is around the shift compliance. The shift compliance is very difficult to match because of the variation or the complexity of the shifts, whether it's overtime, shift premiums, priorities, given that these shifts can happen late at night, early in the morning, and every state has different rules about how it's all handled. Those shift compliances can get really hard to kind of manage. And the last one really is how we think about the ultimate optimization of the vendors in the space. As a construction company, as a healthcare institution, as a hospitality vendor, you might be thinking, how do I prioritize my agencies? How do I think about the best vendors for every single job? And doing that in a more traditional way can be quite challenging. So these are some of the ways we think about some of the current challenges that procurement buyers are facing in this space, specifically as it relates to shift-based labor.
Yeah. Well, Dom, building off exactly what you just said and the last point you made specifically is, more procurement leaders are turning to VMS platforms, they've leaned on external staffing agencies to sort of supplement their workforces, especially in sectors that you mentioned: healthcare, retail, hospitality, industrial. One of my favorite questions to ask is what sets Network apart, in this crowded space from other VMS platforms that these industries might be exploring and using?
Yeah. And it really, goes back to where we started the conversation, right? There are lots of VMS choices out there. As a procurement leader, you get kind of flooded with the sea of, established VMS players and then probably some new entrants. And where Network really sets itself apart is in the industries that we service. It's in that shift-based labor category. And when you're purpose-built for shift-based labor, there's a couple of things to really understand there in terms of what's going to make that product great for you to use as a procurement leader. So one, it's important to understand that we've built Network on the expertise of having managed large marketplaces, having run shift-based programs of our own. The Network platform has hundreds of thousands of shifts that have already happened inside of it, which is what it's kind of been built of to be able to substantiate some of the features and product functionalities that we've built to market. But really, where Network's going to make a difference is not only in some of those, key areas we talked about earlier: rate compliance, eliminating time theft, built-in shift compliance, doing the real-time vendor optimization for those procurement leaders, but where the organization is going to find great value is in the operations manager or the shift manager's experience. Because it's purpose-built for shift-based labor, the shift manager who's actually on site is going to be able to better manage the staff that's coming to their venue much better than in any other platform. Imagine you're, an operations manager or shift manager, and you've got 10 agencies coming to your venue across, maybe 3 or 4 different labor categories, each using, 10 different timesheets of different platforms, or, email rosters that you've been sent and printed out with, places for them to all sign their timesheets. That can be really complex to manage at the end of the day. What Network tries to do is simplify all that complexity all the way up from the procurement leader perspective, right down to the shift manager who's actually managing the shift. So some 4, kind of key assets of that, sticking with the theme here, is one, that dynamic scheduling. So as a shift manager, if you need 5 prep cooks, 2 line cooks, 3 dishwashers, and 2 bussers, you can put that order in within 30 seconds. You can do it in a mobile app, that's really easy for you, or you can do it via a desktop. And you're going to get, the resultant staff within a few moments of actually putting in the order. So that real-time dynamic scheduling of having the various different components. Second would be, as a staff manager, you tend to start enjoying working with different workers. So you want to start managing those pools of workers that you enjoy working with. So being able to have your preferred list of workers, or being able to say, within this agency, I like working with these three bartenders, or within this agency, I like working, let's choose a different industry, these three construction workers, right? It can be very important when you're managing this at really high scale and volume. The third is that it's going to really give you that real-time visibility, specifically as you think about, geolocation tracking or start and end time of shifts, so that if you are waiting for 10 workers to arrive on site, you're not saying, hey, where is everybody? You actually have a mobile app or a desktop application that's showing you where your agency workers are arriving or how they're actually coming to your job site. And then, four, to kind of sum up what we've talked about there in terms of some of the different applications, it's mobile first. So, we always say, it's mobile first because it's built for the industry. The industry is mobile first. The industry, is on their feet all the time. As a frontline industry, you're very much, not in front of a desktop or not in front of a computer. So what this really, kind of enables, it enables that, duality between a procurement leader making sure they're optimizing spend and the shift manager actually able to actually deliver on performance for their business.
Wow, that's super cool. I would love to dive in even more, and I do want to talk about scheduling because you know how
Yeah.
frontline scheduling can be a logistical nightmare. How
Mm-hmm.
how does Network's VMS streamline scheduling and then really improve that overall workforce management for companies that are relying on shift-based and hourly labor?
Yeah, and it's been a big challenge for the last 10 or so years in terms of actually understanding in a scheduler how you're going to create something that's so flexible that it can meet the needs at any given moment of various different requirements, like in shift-based. Because in shift-based, again, you might need somebody in the next hour, or you might need somebody a month from now. You might need one worker, or you might need 10 workers. You might need a single day, job right now, or you might need a set of events over the next 3 months that's recurring and continuing. So what the network scheduler really does is adapts to that dynamicism and really, articulates this flexibility by curating for those different use cases. So, if you do need, that last minute worker to actually get onto a job, not only is the scheduler going to go ahead and react differently to that last minute job you're trying to fill, but it's also going to have a different way that the matchmaking is created around the agencies and the way invites are sent out to the agencies to go ahead and actually accept and fulfill jobs. So the way we really, kind of built it to solve this, as you say, logistical nightmare, of going back and forth of the scheduling, is we've linked the scheduling and the matchmaking together so that based on the type of job that you're inputting, whether that's a single day, multi-day, last minute, recurring job, the matchmaking of how the agencies are actually chosen is going to react quite differently. And that's proving really effective in some of the various situations that can happen in shift-based work.
Feel like we have to talk about AI somewhere, and I think this is a good way to start. Because every podcast that we do, the Millennium Alliance seems to now revolve a little bit around AI, and how could it not? Especially with solutions out there and the way AI is kind of transforming the digital enterprise. There are different solutions that AI really is helping in so many ways. And Network
Mm.
utilizes AI powered matching in its VMS platform. So so how does this approach differ from traditional staffing methods?
Yeah.
And a little bit, Dom, about the talk to me about the tangible benefits that you've observed from both workers, employers, and even internally.
Yeah, the AI question, AI inside of the VMS and how ultimately network is starting to leverage the data sets to really provide the best outcome for our procurement leaders. So the way I would think about it, abstract, is that from a procurement perspective, you're always trying to optimize for the right agencies, right? The right suppliers in your program. And the typical way of doing that more traditionally is you get a list of vendors that you work with. You try to rationalize that vendor list a little bit to optimize for the right ones, and you might review that on a cadence. Think, annually is very typical, or quarterly at best for some. And so what Network's going to do is change that whole process from that more traditional cyclical process cycle to being real time and optimizing for the right supplier in every situation that your staffing suppliers are actually going to cater for. So for instance, at the end of every shift, a shift manager has the ability to rate a worker, has the ability to say, that was a really positive experience, and we want that agency worker back again, or that was not a great experience and that agency worker wasn't a good fit. And the AI can then go ahead and start thinking and saying, hey, based on that result, what are the types of workers that we actually want to go ahead and recommend for these types of jobs? And what does that result mean for the actual vendors or suppliers that we have inside of the program? And so things like, lateness is measured, things like, on-time clock-ins is measured, things like performance at the end of the shift is measured. And those different measurements are going to create scorecards and ultimately ratings for the actual suppliers that are real time so that procurement leaders can actually go ahead and get real time recommendations and insights from the AI about the best optimized suitable vendors for them in the given program that they have. So they don't have to wait till the end of the quarter or the end of the year to do that review anymore.
There's been an increasing reliance on contingent labor across industries. I mentioned this in the intro, and I think it definitely needs to be addressed. And that is so, particularly with those with such a high concentration of frontline workers. What one of Network's key outcomes is reducing this reliance and lowering those labor costs. So I love success stories and examples. It's my
Mhm.
favorite part of the podcast. Can you share some examples or one or two about how Network helped an organization, a client, successfully achieve this?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, this is not only your favorite part, it's our favorite part, right? Actually seeing the product in action and
Right.
seeing what the product can deliver, and the real results is what gets us excited and what keeps, the team building Network to evolve. And ultimately, as you say, it's really about that, I've got this temp spend that I understand, but how can I, as a procurement leader, get control of that temp spend so that I actually can understand it and take action on it? Whether it is I do want to reduce, or whether it's that, I want to go ahead and understand it in better markets differently. And so, yeah, I think one of the more fun case studies in a company we really love and value is SSA Group. SSA Group's a fantastic cultural attractions supplier, and they really have an amazing culture inside their own organization, which is why we love partnering with them so much. But specifically around implementing Network, we've been able to roll out Network in some early pilots with them to really be able to help them in the same way as we've discussed previously, which is about enforcing, the ultimate value of that shift-based equation, which is getting the right agencies at the right jobs. That can seem, quite trivial in terms of the management of it, but to put it all inside of a platform, to get the vendors standardized, to be able to, at a unit level in any of their given zoos or any of the fun cultural attractions that they go ahead and manage and provide oversight to be able to press a button and have the right vendors arrive, has been a real joy and a real value to see live and in action. Again, before that, right, there were lots of calls, lots of emails, lots of spreadsheets, lots of inefficient time spent kind of getting that agency labor that wasn't really managed or controlled. And now, within a tap of a button using the Network platform, they're able to go ahead and actually see, what vendors are in their area, what vendors are going to show up, and then track all those workers all the way through to actually delivering great service. We've been seeing some really great results with SSA and really proud of the work we're doing together.
That's great. The the healthcare sector specifically is also worth mentioning because as for all the unique workforce challenges,
Very
they
different sector.
and especially post-pandemic, you could argue this industry definitely has the most burnout. And speaking of
Mm,
frontline workers,
mm.
how has Network kind of adapted its solutions to address, so many evolving needs of procurement leaders in the healthcare industry in this space because it is so unique and particularly also in areas like compliance and flexible scheduling.
Yeah, yeah. I think you hit on the buzzword there for the healthcare industry, which is going to be compliance. When you think about adapting, the solution as we've built it for the healthcare sector, it really comes down to the compliance module that we have built into the platform to ensure that all of the agency workers that are going to arrive on site are properly accredited for the requirements that the institution is going to require. And so that's a really, simple and easy process that, the procurement leadership or the individual staffing manager can set up as they start setting up the requirements for the different units and making sure that the agency and the agency workers are properly attesting that they've gone ahead and met those compliance requirements. Having that built into the platform is fundamental because it ensures that the right workers are going to arrive for every shift and that every shift is going to actually end up delivering net successful because of those compliance requirements. The other one I would say in link to the compliance side is the credentialing side. So because of the various different nature of the healthcare institutions, you might need different credentials when arriving to a healthcare institution. And so the accreditations process or the compliance module that we have built in to the network platform can also work very well for credentialing and making sure that the agency workers are getting the right credentials so that they can go ahead and enter these facilities with ease, as opposed to sometimes, they're waiting outside or, they're trying to get to the right location to find where to clock in or where to get managed properly. So this flexibility between, the compliance module being applied to certifications that are actually needed on job sites and the actual credentialing, we've seen, addressing some of the needs specific to this very industry.
That's great. And kind of now tackling the role that network is playing in automating processes like compliance and scheduling and wage management. I'm wondering how automation kind of plays into this and how automation is transforming vendor management, particularly in shift-based industries.
Yeah, yeah. I love, when you reference back to shift-based industries, right? It's where we specialize and it's where we focus. So it's really what we know best in terms of understanding, how that experience looks end to end and what can be automated there. So let's start, with an example of, a hospitality provider. Imagine a large F&B company, maybe, has a few different sectors, maybe operating, a stadium, let's say. And for the stadium, the first part is you have to, actually get the requisition posted in. So let's say you need 60 workers to arrive to your stadium, which is quite common. I mean, it could be 60 or 600 sometimes. These jobs get quite large. And let's say, of those 60 workers, you're roughly going to divide that between about 3 to 5 agencies. And then of those 3 to 5 agencies, when you actually get to the job site, right, you're going to have, typically in a traditional method, maybe, 7 different points of being able to clock in, because you have different kind of subunit facilities. And then, of course, at the end, you're going to need to understand how to actually bill those various different agencies that actually work that job. And the beauty of that is that network handles that entire process from A to Z, all inside the technology. So you can go ahead and right into the network platform. As a staffing manager, you can book those 60 different positions. Those 60 requisitions can then get put into the AI to actually distribute out all the different labor to agencies in that preferred list that I was talking about before. Inside that preferred list, the agencies can then either via API, we have some great app-based agencies on the platform that integrate their apps with the network platform, or via the web scheduler, they can go ahead and actually fulfill those jobs. So let's say, 4 agencies fulfill the job. Then the manager on site can actually track the agency workers arriving to the job at the 6 different location sites, which gets a bit complicated. Again, this is where we love the complexity of shift-based labor. But at those 6 different location sites, the manager can actually clock in each of the different agency workers and make sure that they're authorized with either geolocation, QR code, or printed out QR code roster. And then finally, after the job's worked, we can handle all the exceptions. And finally, when the agencies need to be billed, all of the shift-based data can come through in consolidated invoicing so that those agencies can be billed out. So, that today is a largely manual process for shift-based labor. We can't underestimate the complexity of it and why it's been handled manually, because it's very hard, to kind of solve for this A to Z. So we see today, paper timesheets, emails, phone calls going around those 60 workers that we were talking about. And when you talk about automation, really the whole value of the platform is to create those operational efficiencies, to make sure that those staffing managers, those finance admins who are dealing with the billing don't have to reconcile it manually. They can actually leverage the technology to do that for them.
Oh, Dom, do you think we should talk a little bit more about AI? I think so.
I, I imagined we would.
Yes, and I think I do want to mention AI, and something I mentioned in the intro is and have this, the ethics question. This AI is changing the way we live and work, and we're only scratching the surface of what this is going to be able to do and what capabilities of AI going forward are going to reach. There's certainly been a growing concern surrounding the ethics of AI-driven staffing solutions and honestly AI solutions in general. I want to know more about Network's approach to AI and how it differs from other solutions that are on the market, and keeping in mind that ethical and equitable outcome.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a great question, right? Because there's a balance there, right? Particularly when we talk about optimization of the vendors within a procurement leader's portfolio, what's important is that the procurement leader is able to actually see the data and act on the data. So, we always say the human oversight in the AI equation is very important. So in the process of any of the decisions that the AI is starting to generate, the actual procurement leaders or the staffing managers in a lot of cases are either A, influencing those decisions, or B, having the ability to override and or change those decisions throughout the process. So, imagine, criteria where you're a procurement leader inside your organization, you've onboarded, 30 different agencies for your shift-based labor, and at one individual site, you've got a top 6 agencies that you're going to be using. Over time, what the platform is going to do, as you kind of asked about how Network leverages AI in that equation, what the platform is going to do is really show you insights about those 6 different vendors inside of the program for that specific unit, so that you, as the decision maker, you in this case being the procurement leader or the staffing manager, can start to make intelligent decisions about how you prioritize those vendors. The recommendations that the AI is going to create are really just that, right? They're recommendations for you to consider in your role. But this human oversight is critically important to maintain the ethics and the understanding and the balance in the equation, so that at every different point, really the end decision maker is the leaders inside the organization who are actually designing these programs. So we always kind of roll up the insights, showcase what the platform has found out, whether that's, hey, this vendor is consistently always late, or hey, this vendor is performing really well and having great results in this area, and you might want to consider them for other areas. The platform is going to go ahead and surface those insights for you as a leader to take action on.
Mm, that's really interesting. Actually, usually I save the future question for the end, Dom, but I think it's a great segue from that response. And in terms of looking ahead, what what emerging technologies or trends do you believe will have the most significance and the most significant impact on procurement in frontline industries? And since you're leading the charge, how is Network positioning itself to really be the leader in these areas?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a little bit, even wider than procurement in some of the spaces
Sure.
that we're talking about. So the first one that comes to mind, and it's the big ethos about how we build product here, is the consumerization of B2B software. So when I say that, what I mean is, we're all very used to now, in our day-to-day lives, using apps for everything, using websites that kind of look nice and interact really well to, guide our personal lives. Well, we, as generations coming up, are becoming, more decision makers in the process. And because we're becoming more decision makers in the process, we're bringing those habits that we've enjoyed in our life, apps that, are very easy and friendly to use inside the equation, to our own buying cycles. And so I think, it's quite a simple one, but it's really hard to deliver and promise, which is the ease of use of, these quite complex, tools that get rolled out for procurement buyers or larger buyers within the space. Products these days, trend wise, we're seeing are moving towards more consumer-esque feels, so that it's really easy to get the end result. For a procurement buyer to be able to get the result of getting that reduction in temp spend or ultimately consolidating their temp labor, it shouldn't take 100 clicks anymore, right? It should be able to be done in 3 clicks or less, just like all other software across industries. So that's one. I think the buzzword you've mentioned about a few times on the call now is going to have to be the second, which would be AI in the space. AI effectively meaning, the decision criteria being taken by the platform instead of, the actual operators of it, or at least influenced by it. We're continually seeing that, specifically when you have industries that have large amounts of data, AI becomes really crucial to ensure that you're able to make the right decisions. Frontline shift-based industries have data happening all the time, everywhere, at every single second. You have workers clocking in over here, workers traveling to a destination over there, a new schedule that got punched in over here, and so on and so forth. And because of that, the ability for a manager, or, you could just say a human, to be aware of all that and to know what's happening at every moment is really difficult, but it's important. And because it's important, AI can, simplify some of that and make recommendations, showcase insights, make decisions, even in some cases that are important. And then I think one of the other ones we're seeing that's very specific to this space, and actually even more specific to shift-based, is the world of API vendors or API agencies. If you think about kind of rolling back, 20 years or so, staffing was very bricks and mortar, phone calls, where, if you wanted, to get staff from an agency, you'd always make that phone call. You'd always have an email. Now, most staffing agencies, have either adopted some kind of tech, or even in some cases, are built mobile first, or technology first. So these technology first agencies that we see in the market, when they look at VMSs that they want to work with, or that they enjoy kind of adapting with, we see them leaning towards an API-based approach. And Network's been building out and offering now, and really excited about its app-based partners in the API ecosystem that we've been offering.
Just quickly, Billy, you mentioned great points there, Dom. And building off that, do want to talk. I think we should mention staffing agencies, and they
Yeah,
play a
yeah,
vital they play a vital role in the
yeah.
workforce ecosystem. There's no doubt about that. How does Network's platform enhance the capabilities of staffing agencies? Perhaps, what unique benefits do agencies
Yeah.
gain from partnering with solutions like Network?
Yeah, yeah. So I think, first, the key element, of a VMS coming in, specifically one that managed shift-based labor, is that, the agencies at the back end of it are going to see the demand from the enterprise, right? So it's a way for the agencies to get access to the demand from the enterprise, and that's always been there. But specifically in Network's case, one, you're going to get that API-based integration for those newer tech-based or app-based agencies. For those app-based agencies, and knowing and working with them, it's going to basically solve a lot of the operational hurdles. To work with some other platforms, you basically have to stitch a few things together, or, they don't have an API-based approach, and therefore you actually have to, kind of do everything manual in what already exists in a technology-based agency for you. And so the API based approach has very much helped us with some staffing agencies. Two, ultimately, the ability to actually get improved fill rates through the platform is right there for even traditional staffing agencies that are using the platform to get demand in from some of the clients on the platform. So traditional agencies are going to get a nice web app where they're able to go ahead and log in and able to go ahead and fulfill orders in real time on demand. And the ability to fill orders is very easy in terms of uploading the workers and getting them on jobs. So you get that ability. And then I would say the last, probably the most important, is they get a streamlined communication between the clients and the workers. So the actual end workers, the agency workers, are actually getting more information about what that job actually is, what attire they might need to wear, what place they might need to check in, and then they would typically get in the natural equation.
Well, Dom, I have a couple more questions for you. I don't want to take up too much of your time on this Tuesday, but
No
I would do
problem.
I'm glad you're enjoying the conversation so far.
Oh yeah.
Managed service providers. Many organizations work with MSPs to optimize their contingent workforce. And curious how Network collaborates with MSPs to create value for end clients and the advantages of being a part of this. What a partnership like this kind of brings.
Yeah, yeah. If we've said it once on the call, I think we're probably going to say it 100 times. But the focus on the shift-based labor really is the differentiator of Network, and ultimately what enables these relationships to be hugely successful with managed service providers, MSPs, and other partners in the industry. Because we tackle a very specific vertical, and we're experts in the space around it, right? We've been doing it, for a bit of time in our own expertise and our own experiences around frontline industries. And so when we partner with MSPs, we're really taking on that hat of helping them understand, the clients that they have existing today that might have shift-based types of labor, or might, kind of be of value as they're exploring shift-based possibilities, as well as clients that we have that already have spend under management that need some of the compatibilities that MSPs have to be able to get more of their spend under control. So really, focusing and being an expert in this, kind of shift-based frontline industry is really the crux of the relationship, because we're really going to spend a lot of our time focused in on how can we make the clients that an MSP is going to service great in the frontline space.
So I do want to kind of give a little closure to this podcast, and I love ending with either a piece of future question or a crystal ball type question, or a piece of wisdom or advice. I want to take that route. Just because there's often a disconnect between C-suite perceptions of what's going on and frontline realities. I'm sure you've seen this. How does Network kind of bridge this gap? And I know Millennium has a nice bridge there, so this is a perfect way to end the question. Dom, the advice that you would give to executives in the C-suite who are looking to really just better understand and support their frontline workers, what advice would you give?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'd say, right, is that the front line powers the economy, right? If we think about, the building that I'm in right now, or the building that you're in, a construction worker, would have built that. If we think about, the late night shift that's happening, in about 6 hours, if you're on the Eastern Coast right now, from now, a nurse, probably saving a life at the moment, or whether it's, in a distribution facility, the supply chain, some, workers on a picker packer facility actually distributing food that's going to reach a family. These workers really power the economy. So the first thing I'd say is, the role and the criticality of the role is largely missed. And the role really is critical. It needs to be viewed as a critical role that's really important to growing and a prospering economy. And so what I would say, to C-suite executives who are looking at, their frontline staffing requirements and looking at their frontline businesses, is that, the data is power. Get behind the data to really understand what's happening inside of your facilities, what types of work is happening, even though it's complex and it's hard to unravel. Get the data around it to really understand, hey, this is the types of workers that are coming into my facility from these various different locations, and understanding what you can actually take action about it. But that first step is really, taking the time to understand what's happening inside of, these shift-based workforces. And once you start there, you can start taking action to, as a procurement leader, look at consolidating some of your spend, or, look at solutions that are well fit, to help you address some of your challenges.
Dom Esposito, CEO and co-founder of Network, the pioneering
Connor,
platform of vendor management
thank you.
systems,
Thank you so much.
a leading, just a leading platform of shift-based workforces. Thank you so much for taking the time. You're a great conversationalist. It was awesome and a pleasure to have you on the podcast and just chat with you. Hopefully, we get to do this again soon.
Likewise, Connor, looking forward to it and appreciate all Millennium Alliance's support.